The flight attendant shook the sleeping girl in row 22. Wake up. Both pilots collapsed. 211 people are going to die. She was 19 years old. 41 hours of flight training. Never touched a jet. Behind her, a man stood up and pointed at her. Are you insane? Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The airport was loud and crowded, the way airports always are at night. People were rushing. People were dragging suitcases. People were talking on phones, buying coffee, checking their watches. Nobody was paying attention to the thin, tired girl sitting alone near gate 14. Her name was Maya Rosen. She was 19 years old. She was wearing old blue jeans, a gray university hoodie, and white sneakers that had seen better days. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun. She had a backpack on her lap and a heavy textbook open on her knees. The textbook was called Principles of Flight, a complete student guide. It had yellow sticky notes on many pages. It had pencil marks in the margins. It was the kind of book that someone reads not because a teacher told them to, but because they are truly in love with the subject. Maya was a second-year aerospace engineering student at Boston University. She had big dreams. She wanted to become a commercial airline pilot someday. She had wanted this since she was 8 years old, when her father took her to an airshow and she watched a small red plane loop through the sky. That day, she had grabbed her father's hand and said, "Papa, I want to do that." Her father had laughed softly and said, "Then you will." He had believed in her completely. He had worked 2 jobs for years just so she could afford flight school lessons. 3 months ago, Maya had started her training at a small flight school near campus. She had logged 41 hours of flight time, all of it in a small, four-seat training plane called a Cessna 172. But her father had passed away suddenly 4 months ago. A heart attack, at age 52. She was flying home tonight to visit her mother. It was the first time she was going back since the funeral. She was tired in her bones. She was sad in a way that does not go away after one night of sleep. She was not thinking about flying. She was thinking about her father. She boarded the plane, Flight 209, a Boeing 737, and found her seat. Row 22. Window seat. She put her backpack under the seat in front of her. She leaned her head against the cold window. Before the plane even finished boarding, Maya Rosen was asleep. 2 men in row 21, directly in front of Maya, noticed her sleeping. One of them was Gerald Fitch. He was 54 years old, a businessman who flew every week. He wore an expensive gray suit and had the kind of loud voice that fills a room whether you want it to or not. The other was his colleague, Dennis Park. He was 47, quieter but quick to agree with whatever Gerald said. Gerald looked back at the sleeping girl and shook his head. "Look at that," he said, loud enough that several people nearby could hear. "She doesn't even know where she is. Probably her first time on a plane." Dennis chuckled. "Young people today. They fall asleep anywhere." Gerald pointed at the aviation textbook sticking out of Maya's backpack. "Oh, she has a flight book. So she's studying to be a pilot?" He laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Are you insane? Do you know how hard it is to become a pilot? Years and years of training. Real skill. Real talent. Not every kid with a dream gets to fly." Dennis leaned over and looked at the textbook too. "She probably just bought it to look impressive on the plane," he said, and both men laughed quietly. A woman in row 23 heard this and said nothing. She just looked at Maya and felt something she could not explain, a small pull of protectiveness toward this stranger. That woman's name was Patricia Cole. She was 44 years old, a schoolteacher. She was traveling with her 7-year-old daughter, Emma, who was sitting beside her. Patricia put her arm around Emma and whispered, "Go to sleep, baby." The cabin lights dimmed. The plane climbed into the night sky. Most passengers settled in to sleep or watch movies. Nobody thought tonight would be anything other than a normal, quiet flight. Nobody knew what was already beginning in the cockpit. Captain Robert Dalton had been flying commercial planes for 24 years. He was careful. He was experienced. He had flown in storms, through turbulence, in fog so thick he could barely see. He had always landed safely. Every single time. But tonight, 2 hours into the flight, Captain Dalton felt something wrong in his stomach. He had eaten a crew meal before boarding, a pasta dish in a plastic container, the kind that flight crews eat on long routes. First Officer Linda Marsh had eaten the same meal. Now, at 1:38 in the morning, flying at 36,000 feet above Ohio, Captain Dalton felt a sharp, twisting pain in his stomach. His face went white. Sweat appeared on his forehead. "I don't feel good," he said to Linda. Linda looked over at him. She could see immediately that something was seriously wrong. His skin had gone pale and gray. His hands were shaking. "Captain, should I call for?" But before she could finish, Captain Dalton slumped forward. His head fell toward the control panel. He was unconscious. Linda grabbed the radio immediately. "This is First Officer Marsh on Flight 209, I have a medical." Then it hit her too. The same sharp pain. The same dizziness. The same terrible weakness spreading through her body like cold water. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She tried to fight it. She pressed the intercom button to call the flight attendants. She managed to say 2 words, "Cockpit. Help." Before she too slipped back in her seat, unconscious. The Boeing 737 kept flying. The autopilot was on. It held the plane steady at 36,000 feet, flying west toward their destination. But the autopilot cannot make decisions. It cannot talk to air traffic control. It cannot land a plane. The fuel gauge showed 2 hours and 58 minutes of fuel remaining. After that, the engines would stop. Senior Flight Attendant James Okafor heard the call. He heard only those 2 words, "Cockpit. Help." And he moved immediately. He knocked on the cockpit door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Still nothing. He used his emergency code and pushed the door open. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. Both pilots were unconscious in their seats. Captain Dalton's head was resting against the side panel. First Officer Marsh was leaning back, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. James checked their pulses. Alive, but completely unresponsive. He put oxygen masks on both of them. He tried to wake them. He shook their shoulders, called their names. Nothing. James had been a flight attendant for 14 years. He had handled emergencies before, passengers with heart attacks, turbulence injuries, a fire in a galley once. But this was different. This was the emergency that was not supposed to happen. He looked at the instrument panel. He did not understand most of it. He could see that the autopilot was on. He could see numbers on the screens. He could not read what they meant. He grabbed the PA microphone. His voice was shaking when he spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need your immediate attention. We have a medical situation with our flight crew. If there is anyone on board who has pilot training or flying experience of any kind, please press your call button right now. This is an emergency." In the cabin, passengers woke up confused. Call buttons began to light up slowly. James walked fast down the aisle, checking each one. A man said he had played a flight simulator game for years. A woman said she had once taken a hot air balloon ride. A teenager said he watched aviation videos on the internet. James's stomach sank lower with each answer. These people meant well. But none of them could fly a Boeing 737. He kept walking. He reached row 22. And he saw the girl with the flight textbook, still sleeping against the window. He remembered seeing it during boarding. It had caught his eye then, a real aviation textbook, covered in notes, well used. He had smiled at it and moved on. Now he stared at it like it was a lifeline. He reached down and shook Maya's shoulder. Hard. Maya's eyes opened slowly. For a moment she did not know where she was. She saw the dark cabin, the rows of seats, the small lights above. Then she remembered. The plane. She was on a plane. The flight attendant was leaning over her, his face pale and tight. "Miss, I need to ask you something very important. Is that an aviation textbook in your bag?" Maya blinked. "Yes." "Are you a pilot? Do you have any flight training?" Maya sat up straighter. Something in his voice made her heart start beating faster. "I'm in flight school. I've been training for 3 months. Why? What's wrong?" James took a breath. "Both pilots are unconscious. Food poisoning. They cannot fly the plane. You are the only person on this aircraft with any flight training. I need you to come to the cockpit." Maya stared at him. The words reached her ears. Her brain understood each word separately. But together, they made no sense. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Did you say both pilots are unconscious?" "Yes. The plane is on autopilot, but we need someone to communicate with air traffic control, make decisions, and eventually land this aircraft." James looked at her with desperate eyes. "You are all we have." Maya felt the blood leave her face. "I fly a Cessna," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "A tiny 4-seat training plane. I have 41 hours of total flight time. I have never even sat in the cockpit of a jet. I am not qualified for this. I will kill everyone." "If you do nothing," James said quietly, "we have less than 3 hours of fuel. Everyone dies anyway. Please." The cabin around them had gone silent. Passengers nearby had heard the conversation. Word was spreading row by row like a wave. A little girl's voice said, "Mama, what's happening?" It was Emma, Patricia Cole's daughter, in row 23. Patricia looked up at Maya. Their eyes met. Patricia did not say anything. She just held her daughter tighter and kept looking at Maya, not with accusation, not with demand. Just with a quiet, raw plea. Maya closed her eyes. She thought about her father. She thought about what he always said when she was afraid of something. "Maya, fear means you care. It does not mean you should stop." She opened her eyes. "Okay," she said. "I'll try." As Maya stood up on shaking legs, Gerald Fitch turned around in row 21. He had heard every single word. His face went red. He stood up from his seat. He pointed directly at Maya, not at James, not at anyone else. At Maya. His voice was loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "Are you insane?" The cabin went completely silent. Every passenger who was awake turned to look. Every head turned toward Maya, this thin, pale, 19-year-old girl in a university hoodie standing in the aisle with shaking hands. Gerald kept going. His voice was sharp and fast, like he was making a business argument. "You are going to fly this plane. You. A student? You just said yourself, 41 hours, a tiny training plane, never been in a jet cockpit. Are you actually insane? You are going to kill every single person on this aircraft." Dennis Park nodded from beside him. "He's right. This is madness. There has to be another way." More murmurs spread through the rows. Some passengers were nodding. Some looked at Maya with fear instead of hope. A man in row 18 said, "Maybe we should think about this." A woman in row 11 started crying harder. Maya stood very still. She did not shout back. She did not cry. She looked at Gerald Fitch for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to show she had heard him, not long enough to give him power over her. Then she looked away and kept walking toward the cockpit. That was when Patricia Cole stood up from row 23. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "Sir. Sit down." Gerald turned to her. "Excuse me. I said sit down." Patricia's voice was calm and absolutely final, the way a teacher's voice gets when there is no room left for argument. "That young woman is walking toward the front of this plane to try to save your life. Your life. And you are standing there calling her insane." She paused. "Think about what you are doing." Gerald opened his mouth. "Sit down," Patricia said again. The cabin was silent for a long moment. Gerald Fitch sat down. And Maya Rosen walked through the cockpit door. Maya stepped through the cockpit door. She had never been in a commercial cockpit before. Not even on one of those school tours that some lucky children get. She had seen pictures in her textbooks. She had watched videos online. But nothing prepared her for this. The cockpit was full of screens, buttons, switches, dials, and panels. 6 large computer displays showed numbers and symbols and lines she barely understood. The overhead panel had dozens of switches. The center console had throttle levers and more controls. The whole front wall was covered in information. In the Cessna she trained in, there were perhaps 25 instruments. Here there were hundreds. Captain Dalton was slumped to the left, his head resting on the side wall. First Officer Marsh was leaning back in the right seat, breathing slowly, unconscious. Maya sat down in the captain's seat. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was completely dry. She looked at the primary flight display in front of her. Altitude, 36,000 feet. Airspeed, 478 knots. Heading, 270 degrees. Autopilot, engaged. Fuel, 2 hours 51 minutes remaining. Maya took one long breath. Then she found the radio. "Mayday, mayday, mayday," she said. Her voice cracked on the first word. She steadied it. "This is Flight 209. Both pilots are unconscious. I am a student pilot with 41 hours of training in a small aircraft. I need immediate help. I need someone to talk me through this." Static. Then a voice, professional, controlled, calm. "Flight 209, this is Chicago Center. We hear you. We have you on radar. You are over Central Ohio at 36,000 feet. My name is Controller Ray Harris. I am here with you. What is your name?" "Maya. Maya Rosen." "Maya, you are doing exactly the right thing by calling us. The autopilot is flying the plane right now. You do not need to touch anything yet. We have time. Are you injured?" "No." "Good. I need to ask, what aircraft have you trained in?" "Cessna 172. Small single-engine plane." A brief pause. "Understood. Maya, I am right now contacting your flight school and your flight instructor. We are going to patch them through to you directly. Hold on." Maya held on. She stared at the instruments. She watched the altitude stay steady. She watched the heading stay steady. The autopilot was doing its job. For now. 2 minutes passed. They felt like 20. Then a new voice came through the radio. A voice she knew. "Maya. It's Daniel. Maya felt something break open in her chest. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. Daniel Torres was her flight instructor. He was 38 years old, patient, funny, with a calm voice that had talked her through her first solo flight 3 weeks ago when she was so scared she could barely breathe. "Daniel," she said. Her voice broke completely. "I'm here," he said. "I'm right here. I'm at the flight school. I'm going to stay on this radio until you are on the ground. Okay? I am not going anywhere." "Daniel, I can't do this. This plane is enormous. I don't know how to fly this." "You know more than you think," he said. "I've been teaching you for 3 months and you are one of the most natural students I've ever had. Listen to me. The physics of flight do not change based on the size of the airplane. Lift is lift. Drag is drag. You understand these things. We are going to go step by step, and I am going to be with you for every single step. Can you trust me?" Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Yes." "Good. First, tell me what you see on the main screen in front of you." For the next 40 minutes, Daniel walked Maya through the cockpit. He was calm. He was clear. He used simple language. When she did not understand something, he explained it a different way. When her voice started to shake, he spoke more slowly and more warmly until she steadied. Maya learned where the mode control panel was, the panel that told the autopilot what to do. She learned how to change the heading. She learned how to read the fuel gauge. She learned where the flap lever was, where the landing gear lever was, how to read the engine instruments. Air traffic controller Ray Harris cleared all other air traffic away from their path. He coordinated with airports across the region. He chose a destination, Columbus International Airport. Long runways. Full emergency equipment. Close enough that the fuel would be more than enough. He came on the radio and told Maya. "Columbus is ready for you," he said. "They have their longest runway open, runway 28 left, over 10,000 feet. Fire trucks and medics are standing by. The weather is clear. Winds are calm. This is as good as it gets, Maya." "Okay," she said. "Okay." Daniel said, "Maya, I need you to do something for me now. I need you to put your hands on the control yoke, that's the wheel in front of you. Don't move it yet. Just feel it." Maya placed her hands on the yoke. It was big and heavy in her hands. She could feel tiny automatic movements as the autopilot made small corrections. "What does it feel like?" Daniel asked. "Heavy," she said. "Heavier than the Cessna." "That's right. That's normal. Now, in a few minutes I'm going to ask you to disconnect the autopilot and fly manually. When that happens, I need you to remember one rule." "What is the most important rule I ever taught you?" Maya did not hesitate. "Fly the airplane first." "Exactly. No matter what happens, no matter what alarm goes off, no matter what you feel, keep the wings level, keep the nose at the right angle, and keep flying. Everything else comes second. Can you hold on to that?" "Yes." "Okay. Let's start your descent." Getting the plane turned toward Columbus was easier than Maya expected. Daniel walked her through the mode control panel step by step. She turned the heading knob. She watched the autopilot bank the plane gently to the left. She watched the heading display count down until they were pointing toward Columbus. Then she set up the descent. She turned the altitude knob down to 10,000 feet. She found the vertical speed control and set it to descend at 1,000 feet per minute, a gentle, slow descent. The altimeter began dropping. 35,000, 34,000. 33,000. "You're doing it," Daniel said. "You are flying this airplane." "The autopilot is flying it," Maya said. "You told the autopilot what to do. That counts." In the cabin, James Okafor had walked through every row, speaking calmly and clearly to every passenger. He told them the situation. He told them a student pilot was in the cockpit with full guidance from air traffic control and her instructor. He told them to stay seated, stay calm, and put on their seatbelts. Some passengers were praying quietly. Some were holding hands with strangers. Some were writing messages on their phones to send to family members as soon as they landed. Emma, the 7-year-old in row 23, was asleep again against her mother's arm. Children have a gift for trusting that things will be okay. Gerald Fitch in row 21 sat completely still with his hands in his lap. He was not saying anything now. He was staring at the seat back in front of him. At 12,000 feet, Daniel's voice changed slightly. Maya, it's time. We need to disconnect the autopilot and you are going to fly manually for the approach and landing. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, step by step. There will be no surprises. Are you ready? Maya looked at her hands on the yoke. She thought about her father. She thought about Emma sleeping peacefully 2 rows behind the cockpit door, trusting that someone up front was taking care of things. She thought about Gerald Fitch, who had mocked her without knowing her name, without knowing her story, without knowing what she had been quietly preparing for. Not for this. She had never prepared for this. But she had prepared, and it was the only preparation available. I'm ready, she said. Good. See the red button on the left side of the yoke? That's the autopilot disconnect. On the count of 3, press it. 1, 2, 3. Maya pressed the button. A single chime sounded in the cockpit. The CMD light on the display disappeared. And suddenly the plane was in her hands. The yoke felt completely alive. It was heavy and responsive in a way the Cessna never was. The plane felt enormous under her, a huge, powerful machine that she was somehow holding in her 2 hands. The controls moved through the air like pushing through thick water. The plane drifted slightly left. Maya corrected. Too much. It drifted right. She corrected again. Too much again. You're over-controlling, Daniel said immediately. His voice was steady. Relax your grip. Don't fight it. The plane wants to fly straight. Let it. Small movements. Maya forced herself to loosen her fingers. She made smaller corrections. Tiny ones. And slowly, slowly, the plane steadied. She was flying. She was actually flying a Boeing 737. Good, Daniel said. That's good. Now I want you to practice a very gentle turn to the right. Just 10 degrees of bank. Just a little bit. Maya turned the yoke slightly right. The plane banked. She brought it back to level. Perfect. Now left. She did it. See? Daniel said. Same airplane. Different size. Ray Harris came on the radio. Flight 209, you are 22 miles from Columbus. I'm going to give you headings to line you up with runway 28 left. Turn right, heading 310. Maya turned the yoke. The plane turned. She leveled it at 310. Good, Harris said. Descend to 5,000 feet. Daniel coached her through reducing the throttles, the big levers that controlled engine power. The engine sound changed, becoming quieter and lower. The nose dropped slightly and the plane began descending again. Watch your airspeed, Daniel said. Keep it around 200 knots for now. Maya watched the airspeed indicator like it was the most important thing in the world. It was. 5,000 feet. The ground was getting closer. Through the windscreen Maya could see the lights of Columbus, a wide, orange-lit city spread below her in the dark. And she could see the airport. 2 parallel lines of white and blue runway lights, stretching long and straight in the darkness. Runway 28 left. Her runway. Her hands tightened on the yoke. I see the runway, she said. I know, Daniel said. Keep breathing. We have about 8 minutes. Let's get you configured for landing. Daniel talked her through every step. Flaps to position 5, she moved the lever, felt the slight vibration as the wing surfaces changed shape, felt the nose want to pitch up, corrected it. Flaps to 15, same vibration, same correction. The plane was slowing down now. The airspeed was dropping. The runway was getting bigger through the windscreen. Landing gear, Daniel said. Find the gear lever, it has a wheel-shaped handle. Maya found it. Her hand was shaking as she grabbed it. Pull it down. She pulled. A loud mechanical sound came from below, a thudding, grinding sound that made her heart jump. Then 3 green lights appeared on the instrument panel. 3 greens, Maya said. That means gear down and locked, Daniel said. You are configured for landing. Now, flaps to 30. She moved the lever. The plane slowed further. She added a little power with the throttles to keep the speed stable. 160 knots. The runway was enormous now, filling the windscreen. Ray Harris came on. Flight 209, you are on glide path, on centerline, 3 miles to touchdown. You look good. You look really good. Maya, Daniel said quietly. You have done everything right. Every single thing. Now I need you to fly this airplane all the way to the ground. Keep it lined up with the centerline. See those white lights running down the middle of the runway? Yes. Keep the nose pointed at them. When you get close to the ground, maybe 30 feet up, I'm going to say, flare. When I say flare, gently pull back on the yoke. Raise the nose slightly. Just like landing the Cessna. Same feel. Same motion. And the wheels will touch down. Then pull the throttles back to idle and let the plane settle. Then brake. The pedals at your feet, press the tops of them. Gently at first, then more firmly. Understand? Yes. One more thing, Daniel said. Your father believed in you. He was right. Maya's eyes burned. She blinked hard. 2 miles from the runway. 1 mile. The runway lights were rushing toward her now on both sides, white and blue, like a long glowing hallway. The ground was very close. She could see the runway surface now. She could see the painted markings. 500 feet, Ray Harris said. Maya held the plane steady. She kept the nose pointed at the centerline. She kept her breathing slow. 100 feet, Harris said. 50 feet. 30 feet. Flare, Daniel said. Maya pulled back on the yoke. Gently. The nose came up slightly. The rear wheels touched the runway with a screech and a solid jolt. The plane bounced once, just once, and came back down. Then the nose wheel touched with a firm thump. They were on the ground. Throttles to idle, Daniel said. Brake. Maya pulled the throttles back. She pressed the brake pedals. The plane began decelerating, powerfully, rapidly. The runway lights blurred past on both sides. She pressed harder. The plane slowed and slowed and slowed. And stopped. Flight 209 sat still on runway 28 left at Columbus International Airport. Engines running. All systems normal. All 211 passengers and crew members alive. For a moment, Maya did not move. She sat in the captain's seat with her hands still on the yoke, the plane perfectly still around her, emergency vehicle lights flashing red and white through the windscreen. Then she heard it. From the cabin behind her, applause. Slowly at first, then louder and louder, until it was a wave of sound that filled the whole aircraft. People were cheering. People were crying. People were calling out her name even though most of them did not know her name. James Okafor opened the cockpit door. His eyes were wet. "You did it," he said. Maya let go of the yoke. She looked at her hands. They were still shaking. She stood up on legs that barely held her and walked out of the cockpit into the cabin. The applause grew. Passengers reached for her hands as she walked past. The young mother 3 rows back was holding her little boy and crying openly. An old woman in row 15 took Maya's hand and pressed it between both of hers and said something in a language Maya did not understand, but she understood the meaning completely. She reached row 21. Gerald Fitch was standing. His face was red. His eyes were wet. He was the man who had stood up in front of the whole cabin and pointed at her and said, "Are you insane?" He was the man who had called her a child. He was the man who had told everyone she was going to kill them all. Now he could not look at her. He looked at the floor. His shoulders were bent. He looked smaller than he had before, somehow. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was very quiet. "I was wrong. I was afraid and I was wrong. You saved my life. You saved all of us." Maya stopped. She looked at him for a moment. She thought about saying something. She thought about telling him that fear is not an excuse. She thought about telling him what his words had felt like when she was already terrified. But she also thought about the cockpit. About how she had found the strength to walk through that door anyway. About how his words had not stopped her. Maybe that was enough. She nodded once. Then she kept walking. She reached row 22, her row, her seat, the window seat where she had been sleeping just 2 hours ago when none of this had started yet. She sat down. She leaned her head against the cold window. And she cried. Silently, deeply, all the way from her chest, not from fear, but from something she could not name. Relief. Grief. The feeling of having been used completely and finding out you were enough. Outside, paramedics were already boarding to take Captain Dalton and First Officer Marsh to the hospital. Both pilots recovered fully within 48 hours. The contaminated crew meal was traced to an airport catering facility that was shut down immediately. Daniel Torres sat in the empty flight school, still holding the radio headset, and said a quiet prayer. 5 years later. Captain Maya Rosen sat in the left seat of a Boeing 737. She was 24 years old. The 4 gold stripes on her uniform had been there for 6 months. She was the youngest captain in her airline's history. Her co-pilot today was a man named Kevin, who had 12 years of experience and had specifically requested to fly with her. "I heard about what you did at 19, Kevin said during pre-flight checks. Was it as terrifying as it sounds? Maya thought about it honestly. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever done, she said. And I think about it before every flight. Because it reminds me why every single flight matters. Not one of them is routine. Not one of them is small. She looked out at the passengers boarding through the jet bridge. Families. Students. Business people. People with stories she would never know. Each one of those people is trusting me, she said. And I don't take that lightly. Not for 1 second. The flight attendant's voice came through the intercom. Captain, we're ready. Maya put on her headset. Columbus Tower, she said. This is Flight 117, ready for pushback. The tower responded. The plane began to move. Maya Rosen smiled, and flew. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded, you are more capable than you think. And the people who mock you before they know your story will one day watch you fly.